is already.
Our guest today is someone who spent an obscene amount of time watching and learning about movies. Is that sad? Not if you make a career out of it. To this end, our guest has accumulated a substantial amount of experience and knowledge from a wide variety of sources, whether working as a photographer, seeking out informative trade publication or academic journals, or producing content of his own. Our guest always finds a way to learn more about how to make progress towards his career goals. The Humanities Mass Communication Department at Norwalk Community College present The New Directors, the show that introduces you to television's future writers, directors, and personalities. And now, join our host, Josh Cortez, to meet the new director, Felix Brito.
Thank you for joining us for today's edition of The New Directors. All the people involved with this program are students in the television production course and are directing, switching, controlling audio, operating camera, and acting as talent for the first time today. The guests you are about to meet are students when not on camera are behind the scenes working hard to bring this program to you with as few mistakes as possible. Each student will write and direct 3 different productions. This program will give them the chance to talk about themselves, the productions they are planning, and give you the chance to get to know them and watch their progress throughout the semester. Our guest today is an NCC student in the film and TV production course with aspirations towards a career in this field. Let's also not forget that he is a renowned musician, sommelier, actor, poet, stand-up philosopher, and most importantly, a charlatan. We would like to introduce you today to our guest, Austin Stearns.
It's great to be here, Josh.
Good to have you. So we know you're an up-and-coming filmmaker, but I'm more curious to hear a little bit what you're working on now.
Well, Josh, the big thing I'm working on now is my independent study. And the subject of that study is horror films, at least as they exist today. And while I love all sorts of movies from all different types of genres, I was attracted to the horror film last year after picking up on a particular trend that I was noticing throughout the year. And that trend sort of has 2 pieces that I'll elaborate on. The first being lots of financial success, and second being movies that were more creative and artistically bold. And when I started doing research, I started to realize that these movies were actually being rewarded for their artistic creativity compared to the rest of the tentpoles that were coming out. These movies offer a better opportunity for filmmakers to go out and make interesting movies. And I can go further into these observations that I make in my video essay, but that of course would eliminate the point for the essay itself. And now, with the help of a visual aid, I'll break down sort of my process of how I made, or how I'm going about making this visual essay. And it begins with lots and lots of research. Look at all of that. Yes, I have filled several books with notes, and I'm slowly going insane. The next thing is acquiring lots of movies, plenty of which I owned already, but you know, I had to go out and get them to get footage to edit together. Next is this is my capture device, which I use to capture the screen of something, and it records it, and I bring it up onto my computer, and I put it in my hard drive. I have lots of movies and all that. I have movies, paratextual materials, promotionals, all that stuff. Then I bring it into Adobe, which, as I've mentioned to you and several other people from this class, I kind of prefer to Avid, although I understand why Avid is better in some different areas. But Adobe is certainly more user-friendly, and I'm glad that I'm using it for my project at the very least. And I think learning Adobe has given me a bit of an advantage in this class with Avid because they're somewhat similar in a lot of different ways. And I think when I come to class, I take things back that I have learned to make my project better. And when I'm outside of class working on my project, I learn new things that can benefit my work in class as well. So I was very happy to be taking this class alongside my independent study. And even though I'm not done yet, I think I've made a lot more progress on my study than I would have without the added benefit of this class. And so far, I think the footage of what I'm working on looks pretty good.
Could you tell us why you decided to have the take the TV production course?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, I'm looking to break into the film industry. And while I'm contemplating transferring to a different school where I assume they would force me to start at the ground and work my way up again, I figured there would be no disadvantage to taking this class now, so I just decided to do it. And it would get me a little bit more experience working with a nonlinear editing system and shooting with other people. So it sounded like fun and the type of work that I should be doing, so I just decided to do it.
Sounds great. What are some of the most useful things you have learned in the TV production course?
I think the things that I absorbed that were most helpful to me were probably the technical information surrounding sort of Avid and just nonlinear editing in general. I think I, for whatever reason, was maybe a little bit more at home with the ideas of like shooting for the edit or how to compose a shot. And I was a little bit more at a disadvantage in terms of using the editing system. So that's where I think I picked up most of the important things that I learned.
Nice. Tell us about the productions you created for the TV1 class: Student Studies, A Cup of Tea, The Nature Project, and The Orange Project.
Well, we produced a wide variety of different things, and let's take a look at them now, and I'll break them down further for you and everyone else.
Sounds great.
So this is my Student Studies project, which I think feels pretty raw to me. I shot it at the last minute without a field shot sheet, and then learned immediately while trying to edit that was the worst mistake that I could have possibly made. Although I did make many mistakes in this first assignment. With that being said, I think it turned out okay, and I have no problem making mistakes because that's the point, because you need to learn. And yeah, this is my cup of tea assignment where I think everything really started to come together for me. I felt very comfortable at this point shooting for the edit and knowing which shots I needed to get. I think I shot the whole thing in about an hour and a half, at least on my project. And I think that's probably because I felt a little bit more comfortable just planning it out beforehand because I knew how it would look after the fact. So I think this is where I really started to get comfortable with the course. This is my Nature project, which is enjoyable for a different reason because it doesn't require the same level of planning, but sort of taps into the work I've done as a photographer where you just go out and you just need to get some pretty looking shots, and then you just bring them back and you have to edit them together in an artful way for music. And while we also had a few requirements in terms of poor man's dissolve and transitions and stuff like that, I think this was pretty much the simplest for me. And this is my Orange project, which was probably the most entertaining one to put together. It was just so much fun using everything we learned to actually make something that was my own idea, sort of. I know we had the limitation of the orange, but we could do anything we wanted, and that just let me go a little bit crazy with this project idea. And yeah, after spending all semester learning how to do it, this was almost, I won't say we coasted through it, but it was definitely simpler.
Now, I know you had one project that felt was your best. Tell us about that project, and why don't we watch a sample of the video with the music you selected?
Okay. Well, I felt my best project was the Orange project. And I'm not going to take credit for that because I stole the idea from a man named Buster Keaton and a movie called Sherlock Jr., which was made in 1924. And in that movie, Buster Keaton jumps into a movie he's watching, and then he starts running around and doing all sorts of fun stuff. And there's a reason, I mean, my Orange project is not as good as Sherlock Jr., but there's a reason why it's entertaining almost 100 years later, and it's because of the way he executed the idea. And it was really fun and simple for me, I feel like, to take that concept and just take the bits of it that would work for this context and this class and just execute it, because it's such a well thought out idea in the first place that it sort of speaks for itself, and it's going to be entertaining no matter what. So I really just had to figure out how to do it. Either way, I think that's what culminated in my best and probably most entertaining project.
You mentioned a variety of things in this course. What's the most important thing you learned and that you think you'll put to use?
I mentioned some of the technical stuff earlier, and more specific than that, I think stuff about maximizing my workflow in any nonlinear editing system was probably the most important thing, because it's very inaccessible at first. But then once you start to learn how to do it, you pick up different things, and then it's about learning how to make complicated edits and sophisticated cuts without expending too much time or energy. And I think the little tips and tricks that I had picked up over the course of the semester were probably the things that I'm going to end up using the most going forward.
Sounds good. Today we met an aspiring director, and in doing so we learned about the film industry and how he looks to fit into it. Going forward, he looks to apply the things he learned from NCC and elsewhere to bring his creative vision to theaters and offer audiences something they haven't experienced before. We would like to thank Austin Stearns for joining us today.
It was great to be here.
Great having you. We hope you enjoyed meeting one of television's future directors, and we hope you will continue to join us each week to watch our progress. Thank you and have a great day.
This has been The New Directors, with your host, Josh Cortez, directed by Felix Brito. I'm your announcer, Tony Sandoval. The New Directors is a Norwalk Community College student production. Our guest today is someone who spent an obscene amount of time watching and learning about movies. Is that sad? Not if you make a career out of it. To this end, our guest has accumulated a substantial amount of experience and knowledge from a wide variety of sources, whether working as a photographer, seeking out formative trade publications or academic journals, or producing content of his own. Our guest always finds a way to learn more about how to make progress toward his career goals. The Humanities Mass Communication Department at Norwalk Community College presents The New Directors, the show that introduces you to television's future writers, directors, and personalities. And now, join our host Josh Cortez to meet the new director, Felix Brito.
Thank you for joining us for today's edition of The New Directors. All of the people involved with this program are students in the television production course and are directing, switching, controlling audio, operating cameras, and acting as talent for the first time today. The guests you are about to meet are students who, when not on camera, are behind the scenes working hard to bring this program to you with as few mistakes as possible. Each student will write and direct 3 different productions. This program will give them a chance to talk about themselves, the productions they are planning, and give you the chance to get to know them and watch their progress throughout the semester. Our guest today is an SEC student in the film and TV production course with aspirations towards a career in this field. Let's also not forget that he is a renowned musician, sommelier, an actor, poet, stand-up philosopher, and most importantly, a charlatan. We would like to introduce to you today our guest, Austin Stearns.
It's great to be here, Josh.
Good having you. So we know you're an up-and-coming filmmaker. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what you have going on right now.
Well, the big thing I'm working on now is my independent study, which is about the horror genre as it stands today, specifically how it pertains to unproven and ambitious filmmakers looking to enter the film industry. And while I love all types of movies, all different types of genres, I was drawn to the horror genre last year when I started noticing a peculiar pattern in the box office for horror movies, and also in critic ratings of the movies, where I noticed that horror movies were earning proportionately an insane, the profit to budget ratio was insane for horror movies, where they were all making tons of money and were also being critically praised. So I thought that was interesting when you compare it to other tentpole franchises, because obviously those would make a lot of money, but they weren't exactly getting the same amount of critical praise. And because the film industry has been undergoing a slight shift where fewer and fewer people are going out to see movies, I sort of tied it into that shift in the industry and tried to look at it from the perspective of somebody who is trying to find an opportunity to do something creative that would also be financially successful. And I could go further into the observations that I've made in my video essay, but ultimately I end up with the conclusion that the horror genre offers a really good opportunity for unproven filmmakers to make something that is going to be easy to market, is going to be artistically bold, and will make money while also not have you compromise on the vision that you're trying to bring to the screen. And with that, I'm going to break down my process of how I sort of started going about making this video essay with the help of a visual aid, and just discuss how I'm putting it together. So it begins with lots and lots of research. I took a lot of notes on a bunch of different movies. I also had to go out and get lots of different critical books to get the current, theoretical perspectives on the genre. Then after that, I had to go and get a lot of the movies in question so I could get footage from them. And I did it with this device here, which is my capture device, which just captures everything on the screen it's hooked up to. I brought it into my computer and brought it into my Adobe editing suite and started to patch it together in a way that I think was both compelling and intelligent, but also entertaining, which is part of the reason why I decided to make this video essay in the first place. It's because I felt that a lot of the academic writing on the horror genre so far was a little bit dry and didn't have the same sort of immediacy as some sort of visual essay might have. And luckily I was doing this in Adobe, Avid, because I find Adobe to be much more user-friendly and easier to learn with. And with that being said, I also think that I learned a lot of things from class working with Avid that I brought back to my own project and helped improve that. And in turn, when I was working on my own project away from class, I would learn things on Premiere that I could bring back to the Avid and improve my own work for this class. So it's a bit of a cycle. But either way, I think working with editing software outside this class ultimately ended up helping me with my own projects here, in addition to actually helping my independent study too.
Very nice. Could you tell us why you decided to take the TV production course here at NCC?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, I'm interested in breaking into the film industry, and while I'm not exactly sure what my plans are, I think I might try to transfer into a film school at this point. I figured there's no reason to wait to start learning about this stuff, and since it's so complicated, I figured it'd probably be best to try to take a class on it, so I just decided to do that. And in addition to that, I felt that learning about any sort of editing software might improve my work on my independent study, which I had planned beforehand before I decided to take this class.
What are some of the most useful things that you've taken away from this program so far?
A lot of the most useful things I've taken away so far have to do with the more technical side of using a nonlinear editing system. I think I was already kind of aware of the idea of shooting for the edit, or how to compose a shot and whatnot. And I think the more technical stuff about, how you're gonna use certain transitions in Avid, or how you maximize the efficiency of your editing process, that was really the big thing I took away from this class.
Nice. Tell us about some of the productions that you created for this class. Some of Student Studies, A Cup of Tea, Nature, and Orange Project.
Well, as you know, we had to produce a wide variety of different things for this class, and why don't we take a look at the footage from it, and I'll break it down to discuss it.
Sounds good.
So, beginning with my Student Studies project, this was the first project we shot for this class, and while I was prepared to do it, I think I was not exactly comfortable yet with the concept of shooting for the edit, which was not helped by the fact that I did not manage to have a field shot sheet for this particular project, and that gave me quite a headache in editing it after the fact. But I still think it sort of turned out well, and it allowed me to make a lot of the mistakes that were learning opportunities, so I could avoid making them in the next project, which is the Cup of Tea project. And in this project, I think everything really started to come together for me. I think I was a lot more comfortable with the idea of shooting for the edit and planning it out beforehand and knowing exactly what I'm going to get while shooting, so I could almost start editing it in my head before the actual photography part of it had begun. And I think that was the most efficient project I worked on. The Nature project I enjoyed for a bit of a different reason. It didn't require as much planning, and sort of got back to the type of photography work I've been doing long before this class, where you just have to go out and frame up a nice shot and shoot something. And it was nice to go out and just try to get some nice compositions and then edit them together after the fact to some music. I really enjoyed the Nature project. But my favorite project, at least in terms of how much fun I had working on it, was the Orange project, which was at the end of the semester, and ultimately is just me using everything I've learned, all the skills I've picked up, to make something that I think is entertaining. We had the most freedom in this project, even though we had the limitation of having to make it about an orange. We had the most freedom to do what we wanted with the story or shoot it in the way we wanted, and I think that probably contributed to me having the most sort of fun while doing it.
Now, I know you had one of the projects that you thought was your best. Tell us which project that was, and let's hear a sample of the music you decided to place that project in.
Okay, so we were just talking about the Orange project, and I'm not sure if you could tell from the way I was talking about it, but that one was my favorite. You see, it was a sort of streamlined process, so I'm not going to say we coasted through it, but I knew what I wanted to get, and then it was just a question of actually trying to get it. I stole an idea from Buster Keaton and his movie Sherlock Jr., which came out almost 100 years ago, and it's a perfect idea. And because it's so well conceived, it was easy to sort of just copy and paste that into my own project and clean up the loose ends so that it worked. And after that, all I had to do was figure out how to execute on the premise, which of course is that this guy goes into a movie that he's watching, and then shenanigans happen. And my project is very much the same. And I really think I enjoy it because compared to the other stuff, I think this is something that's actually kind of fun to watch. It doesn't feel like an exercise. It feels like something you might have made because why not? Because it's fun, because it's funny, because you enjoy making it. And I think that energy also sort of worked its way into the project while we were shooting it. So I think that's probably my favorite one I worked on.
Nice. Earlier you mentioned that you learned a lot of useful skills in this course. What do you think was the most important, and how do you think you'll put it to use in your career?
Like I mentioned earlier, with all the technical details I took away, I think more specifically it was the idea of maximizing my workflow while I'm editing, and it doesn't matter what software I'm using, but maximizing your workflow. Because really, at a certain point, you get past how inaccessible it is, and you start using it, and then you have to learn how you can use it and be efficient with your time as well. And I think that was a big tool for me, all the little tricks to maximize my workflow, which I put to use immediately on my independent study, and I know they work because they've been very helpful.
Sounds good. Today we met an aspiring director, and in doing so, we learned about the film industry and how he looks to fit into it. Going forward, he looks to apply the things he learned from NCC and Elbert to bring his creative vision to theaters and offer audiences something they haven't experienced before. We would like to thank Austin Stearns for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. To continue each week to watch our progress, thank you for having a great day. Thank you.
This has been The New Directors, with your host Josh Cortez, directed by Felix Brito. I'm your announcer, Tony Sandoval. The New Directors is a Norwalk Community College student production.